Today's architecture is outdated, dysfunctional, and unfair. It fails to offer countries the affordable finance required to meet our shared goals, and it does not fulfill the basic foundational function of providing a financial safety net for all developing countries. Developing countries are experiencing their worst half-decade since the early 1990s. Many face unpayable debt service costs, which are now at record levels. The Summit of the Future will consider the need for deep reforms to make financial institutions and frameworks truly universal and inclusive.
80 years ago, the international financial system was set up to protect the world from deep economic and financial crisis. But today, the system is broken.
The current international financial architecture is not delivering as it should for human rights and sustainable development.
It has become apparent and imperative that the financial architecture that is now outdated has to be reformed if any prospect for achieving the sustainable development goals is going to be achieved.
One of the key changing reforms that actually we should be discussing about is the reform of the governance of the international financial institutions. This change should bring more representation to make the playing field equal among different countries, particularly between developed and developing countries. It's also very important to acknowledge that actually equal participation under no domination is one of the basic principles of political participation among countries.
We should be committed to a new global deal around economical transformation. It has to connect economic growth with the appropriate use of natural resources, developing a model with a best social distributions of gains and decarbonizing the economy.
One major thing that can make a difference is putting human rights at the center of economic policymaking. Now, what is human rights? It's the right to health, the right to education, the right to adequate standard of living, the right to social security.
The challenges that start to come about is when we come into what is being called the debt cycle, which is a country continually putting itself in that position to take on debt again and again and again, and sometimes using debt to pay off a previous debt. So this is the toxic circle that we have to really be worried about in human rights spaces. So if there was a call to action for me, it would actually be to make sure that when you're in international spaces, but also in continental or regional, as well as in domestic spaces, that the people speaking to finance and money and debt and tax and illicit financial flows are also speaking about human rights implications of it.
Low-income countries and middle-income countries are paying 5 or 3 times more than was considered a maximum in 1953 in the London Agreement. This is a real crisis. We need to move beyond simple solutions. We need to think about things that are really structural.
Today we see a situation where one single company has revenues which are more than the GDP of multiple countries combined. And for individual countries now to tax such enormous corporations or even billionaires has become really very difficult. And this requires strengthened multilateralism. In this context, moving towards the UN Framework Convention on International Tax Cooperation would be a very concrete way forward.
Everyone needs tax to help enable their human rights, whether it's education, whether it's health, whether it's social protections. It's crucial for all of us. Unitary taxation is really key. And attached to that is the move to shift the governance of tax governance rules to the United Nations, under the auspices of the United Nations. Now, we have real momentum around that at the moment.